Hello there, welcome to the programme. Today we're talking about Trumponomics with Professor Richard Wolff, the host of Economic Update. Now, Mr. Trump was talking about his tax plan this week, which includes slashing rates for companies and individuals to boost growth, which will inevitably increase the budget deficit. Now, he referred to this process as priming the pump, saying in an interview with The Economist that if you don't do so, you're never going to bring your taxes down. Having to put something in, in order to get something out. That's the thesis behind it. Is this smart economics then, Richard?
No, it's painful to listen to and even more painful to watch. First of all, I first heard the phrase priming the pump 45 years ago as a graduate student in economics at Yale University. President Trump referred to it as a phrase he found interesting and that he developed. This is, to be subtle about it, not the case. It's a very old idea. It has other names. One name is trickle-down economics. That's not a very friendly name because basically this idea has not worked. There is no reason to believe that when you cut taxes on companies particularly, but even on individuals, that will necessarily translate into more jobs or economic growth. It may, but there's no guarantee of it. And under many circumstances, all you get if you cut taxes is companies with more money than they had before and individuals with more money than they had before. And what then happens is open to all the influences that shape what individuals and companies do when they have more money.
The interesting thing, Richard, is that we've seen the stock market, the US stock market, soar in response. We call it the Trump trade. US earnings were very positive. What is this all about? Because the markets seem to like this idea of slashing these taxes.
Yes, the market always loves the idea of slashing taxes, particularly on businesses, because they will now have more money to make more profits than they did before. So Mr. Trump is doing what Republicans and often Democrats always do, which is to cultivate the support of the business community and the rich people who sit at the top of it, because they are the major funders of both parties. And as a result, the stock market is a place where the president can cultivate his friends. If you put that together with the last 8 years since the crash of 2008, when we have increased the money supply in the United States in ways we never did before as a nation, you have a flood of money coming into the stock market because it can't go anywhere else, boosting the shares. So between the rising market and the promise of tax cuts, yes, you have a soaring stock market until the reality sets in that this may not change the basic contours. And then we can see the market go down as dramatically as it recently went up.
I want to talk about China and the US if we can, because Trump has changed his tune slightly. We had the US and China, they've reached this 10-point trade deal that opens the Chinese market to the US credit rating agencies and credit card companies as well. Now, under the deal, China will also lift its ban on US beef imports and accept US shipments of liquefied natural gas. And in return, Chinese cooked chicken will be allowed into the US market, and Chinese banks can enter the US market as well. Now, this is certainly a turnaround because we had Donald Trump referring to China as a currency manipulator. It was American jobs for American people. What do you make of this trade relationship between the US and China? Because his rhetoric leading up to the presidential election was quite different.
Yes, the rhetoric of candidates, typically in this country at least, is very different from what they deliver. Mr. Trump found it very useful to be anti-Chinese, alongside being anti-Mexican, anti-Muslim, and a whole host of other things that he thought would get him votes, which unfortunately it did. But then when he gets elected, he has to face the reality. And the harsh reality is that the Chinese economy is now the second most important economy in the world. The interconnections and interdependencies between the United States and China require the United States, at the very least, to offer quid pro quo in any dealings with China. Dictating to the Chinese is over. This has not yet been well understood in the United States, partly because leaders like Mr. Trump cultivate the fantasy that we are where we were. Any deal with the Chinese now will have to give as much as it offers to get from the Chinese, because they have as many cards in their hand to play as we do here in the United States. That's why they're not going to be designated a currency manipulator. That's why they're not going to have a tariff against the goods that come in. None of that stuff is going to happen. There are going to be piecemeal agreements in which the Chinese get at least as much as they give, and whatever veneer Mr. Trump and his people put on all of this, that will be the reality.